Hey there, so that was me playing along with Nelson Farias, one of the tracks from his book, The Brazilian Guitar Book. So I'm going to cover this book in this video. I'm going to talk about what you would learn from this book. So right off the bat, it's not a beginner's book. It's not kind of a how to play Bossa Nova, I wouldn't say, even though there are some of that stuff too. It's more for someone like me actually who know how to play the guitar, you know how to play a little bit of Bossa Nova, but you don't, you want like a deeper understanding of the Brazilian guitar tradition. So it's like an overview over different styles, different Brazilian guitar styles. So it's divided into 5 different styles. First samba, then Bossa Nova. Chapter 3 is Choro, chapter 4 is Frevo, and then Baião. So forgive me for butchering. I'm going to butcher a lot of names and my pronunciation is terrible because I don't speak Portuguese, but bear with me. So I'm just going to go over each style briefly and show you how I work with this book and what you can learn from this book. So let's get started. So the first chapter is samba, and then there's a general outline, meaning he's explaining what that means. Where is that music coming from? Who are some famous artists and what are some famous recordings? That's a really good thing about this book. There's references to recordings you can check out. And then there's different styles of samba. Within this style, there are subdivisions that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. Partido alto, for example, or batucada. So by the way, Nelson Farias, this author, is a great Brazilian guitar player who's played with everybody in Brazil. And he's got his own YouTube channel where he is inviting all these super famous Brazilian stars. So I'll link to his channel. It's really good. You could spend like a month at least just watching those videos. Well, the first thing he does, he explains that the samba rhythm, the melody, is often very syncopated. You have to get used to hearing syncopated rhythms and seeing them on the staff. So by the way, there's no tabs in this book. This is for those of you who can read music. So samba is actually 2/4. It's a 2/4 time signature. So if, let's say you have a rhythm of 8 notes, like this. You have to get used to syncopation. So you can start by syncopating the last note, and then the second last as well, and so on until they're all syncopated. But you want to do that with a bass to get used to splitting the hand, right? So here is no syncopation, and the last note syncopated. The 2 last notes. All of them. Or actually, this is all of them. There it is. Because a lot of these tunes are very syncopated, so then there's a list of tunes with very syncopated melodies, like for example, Desafinado, right? Which is very syncopated. So it's all syncopation. So you do that with bass notes. Really good, good thing to practice. Then you just add the chords. So that's the first thing he talks about, the melody. You have to get used to syncopated melodies. Then he shows you a basic pattern. So in this video, I'm not going to put anything on the screen. I'm not, it's because, you know, I don't want to take anything from the book. I'm just showing you what's in here. So a typical pattern could be, so if the bass is playing the steady pulse and the syncopation in the fingers, that's a samba rhythm, right? So there's an example here. So that's an example from the book. So there's a combination of just little examples, like little just typical comping rhythms, and then whole tunes, examples of tunes, original tunes of his and other really famous tunes like Triste that I played in the beginning there. But what's nice is that I think what happens to a lot of us is like we go to school, jazz school, and we pretty early on realize that Bossa Nova is something we need to understand how to play. So we learn a Bossa Nova pattern, right? And then we might learn a tune like Blue Bossa, which is actually not a Brazilian tune, right? Like it's a jazz tune, but it's the same time it's a Bossa Nova, so it is a bossa. I don't want to get, some people get caught up in that. It's like, oh, it's not real Brazilian Bossa Nova. Doesn't matter. It's like, it's music, right? If it's good, it's good. But we realize that, oh, yeah, that is Bossa Nova, but there seems to be so much more to it, right? Like this Brazilian music, there's such a rich musical culture. So this, it's not enough. Then you watch someone like João Bosco or someone like that, and you realize that they're doing way more than just that. So this is a Bossa Nova pattern, or a samba pattern could be used. But it's kind of like saying that, you know, how do you play blues? Yeah, that is a blues, but you almost never play blues like that. And then there's so many different styles of blues, different types of blues. It's like just like in Brazilian guitar, it's the same thing, like the urban big city styles and then the more rural. Same thing as, you know, like deep South blues as opposed to Chicago blues, very different. So it's the same thing here. You have the Bossa Nova, more sophisticated from Rio, and then you have Bahia and the more kind of music that is more, I guess, traditional Brazilian music, more closer to like the folk type of music. So this book talks a little bit about this stuff. It's not like if you're a scholar and or an ethnomusicologist and really want to learn about Brazilian music. No, this is like an overview, a brief overview over all these different styles. Then he shows you that you can split the strings. So I'm using the 3 fingers, but I'm jumping. And then you can syncopate the bass as well. So here's an example from Ivan Lins, a tune called Desesperar Jamais. So here's the bassist playing. And this is supposed to fit with a drum called Surdo. So you can learn a lot of stuff by doing research on YouTube. So here's a video of somebody showing you how to play Surdo Batucada. So what I like to do is I like to take this app that I talk about a lot in my videos, Drum Genius, and then I'll find a samba rhythm. I'll go to Brazilian and pick a samba rhythm. This is a samba with the pandeiro only. And then I'll play, just practice. And I can do that all day. It's not as good as having a real pandeiro player in your apartment, but which I don't. If you have that, that's really good. But it's an actual loop of a real player, so it's not a machine. You're listening to an actual recording, right? So then there's all these fills that you can make. Just like in blues, you have to know how to play turnarounds and certain things you do, quick change and all that stuff. Same thing here, the little tricks, and there's tons of this stuff explained in this book. Then he showed you the so-called Partido Alto, which is apparently a more urban style, and an example of that is the tune Incompatibilidade, the Genius. Don't ask me to pronounce that again. By João Bosco, and I'm butchering his name as well. But João Bosco is my favorite samba Brazilian guitar player. So good, like his music is fantastic, and this tune you might have heard it with Lee Ritton or made it famous also. So that's a Partido Alto. Then I'm splitting so all this to recreate the different percussions. So I'm not an expert at that stuff, but if you understand what the percussionists are doing, you will be able to play this music better, obviously. So I'll pick in Partido Alto here. That's a Partido Alto. Emphasis on the beat 2 and 4 or beat 2. So just playing along with that loop gives you a better feeling, because you have to understand the clave and the rhythm. And it's so good to be able to do that. So even if you're not going to become a Brazilian musician, right? Some people get super involved. Like I know people who get obsessed with this stuff, and they move to. I know some people, they move to Brazil to really learn how to play this stuff. One guy actually never came back. He moved there for good and became like a session musician there, a friend of mine. But anyway, so I'm not doing that. I'm not here to become like the next super Brazilian guitar player. I'm just want to expand so that I know a little bit more than just I want to know a little bit, dig a little bit deeper than that. And that's why this book is really good. I'll link to a YouTube channel or a YouTube video where you can find this a lesson on this tune. A very accurate lesson, I think. By the way, so Nelson Farias' channel, he has tons of videos, lessons, and even though he's speaking Portuguese, you can understand pretty much what he's doing. So I'll link to some of those as well in the description below. For example, he's has one video where he's teaching this tune by Toninho Horta. Toninho Horta is one of the best Brazilian guitar players. So good, and he's I think he influenced Pat Metheny a lot, and Pat Metheny is playing on some of his records. Some of Pat Metheny's best playing, actually, you can find on Toninho Horta's albums from the 80s. He's got one tune called Aquelas, coisas, todas, and here he'll do the same thing, the kind of Partido Alto rhythm. the middle strings with the fingers, so I'm down on the 5th string. So I'm playing the bass note with the finger instead of the thumb. Then you just add the thumb in certain places. You see, that's a little bit more interesting than... It sounds a little bit more authentic to me. So instead of me showing you what I'm doing there, I'll link to that lesson video with Nelson Farias where he's showing you how to play this tune. So all these examples in the book have audio. It comes with audio. So this example sounds like this, for example. The one I just showed you. So that's the audio with Nelson Farias, so you can check out what's going on. So I noticed there was a little bit more to it at the end there. Then there's another example of Joyce, another great guitar player from Brazil, Joyce Moreno, I think her name is, where she's using these open strings. This tune is called Feminina. So it doesn't always have to be syncopated. You could play like jump, 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 jump. So it's A major 9 to some kind of E sus. So it really brings out the guitar, right? That's why I love this stuff, because when you're playing jazz, you know, the guitar doesn't have a really specific role in jazz, to be honest. But in Brazilian music, it really does. Especially in Bossa Nova, you need the guitar. So in samba, it could be the cavaquinho, is that what's called, cavaquinho? It's like a 4-string guitar. But in Bossa Nova, you definitely need nylon string guitar. So the guitar has a very specific role, and you want to bring out the guitar as opposed to when you're playing in flat keys in jazz, right? This really fits the guitar. So by the way, I noticed there's a video with Joyce playing, I think at Berklee College, and I noticed she does a little bit more. She's using like open strings and pull-offs and stuff, so I'll link to that video as well. So just to be sure, I'm not showing you what I'm doing. If you're being frustrated with that, I'm showing you what's in here so that you can get the book and learn it yourself. So another thing that's so good about this book is that it's filled with references to albums, to artists and songs and tunes. Sometimes we play samba in other time signatures, like in 3. So again, on this app, I have a samba in 3. So it could sound something like this. And then you can play this polyrhythm, right? Like 4/3 if you play dotted 8th notes. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. could also try to play every chord syncopated. A really famous example of samba rhythm in 3 is this tune Frevo e Canela. Oh, I'm pretty sure that I totally butchered that name completely. Frevo e Canela from Milton Nascimento, another artist you have to check out if you haven't. Another huge influence on Pat Metheny. Also, Pat Metheny is on his records, and some of his records have so many great musicians on them, like from American jazz musicians. Herbie Hancock is there. Even like P.T. Gabriel, people like that are on his album. So I'll make a list for my Patreons with albums that I think you need to check out. I'm sure a lot of you have heard these albums. But this tune sounds like... So that is also in this book. So you might have heard that with George Duke, right, from the album Brazilian Love Affair. I think it's on there. Then sometimes you might want to play in 7, because the partito alto rhythm almost sounds like a 7. Another really cool thing about this app is that you can turn off the clave or turn it back on. And then some tricks on things you can do, like I said earlier, like turnarounds. You can do some roll things with a thumb. And then there's a transcription of one of Nelson Farias tunes. Comping and melody, and then Tristeza, famous tune, and the chord melody kind of arrangement by Nelson Farias. I'm not going to try to play it here. So that was samba. Now moving on to bossa nova. So it's a little bit more of a sophisticated urban music. I guess it got really big in the 60s because of certain movies, I think, and it became popular in America and Europe. Some of these names became huge stars, like João Gilberto, and they made some famous recordings with Stan Getz where we've heard all these tunes like Wave, Desafinado, all these tunes that we have to learn when we're trying to learn jazz. So they're part of the standard jazz repertoire. But I think, like for example, Tonino Horta that I mentioned before, I think his music should be up there as well. Some of his tunes deserves definitely more recognition. So yeah, the bossa nova has a little bit more, it's a little bit softer, I guess, and it definitely has this nylon string guitar, and the chords are very sophisticated. The harmonies are more sophisticated. So some people say that, oh, it's not really Brazilian music, it's American jazz. But I don't want to get caught up in those kind of discussions. I think if it's good music, it's good music. So then he'll show you the bossa nova clave, right? One of them. So the clave gives you kind of the rhythm, a shape, as opposed to just a steady beat. We're thinking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the time signature, but it's not really the pulse. The pulse is, that has some kind of contour and shape to it, which gives it motion and life. So when you're playing, you need to know where the clave is and understand the clave, especially if you're playing like Cuban music. But here too, so that's what's so nice about this music. I guess it's all coming from dancing. Then there was just some standard bossa nova things. Of course, you'll find one note samba in here. Let's listen to it. So one thing is important to understand is the idea of syncopating or anticipating the next beat to the next bar. So the chord happens before the bass. So I have to kind of think a little bit ahead, which is really good to do because it gives you that forward motion that we're looking for. So now I'll take my app and I'll go to Bossa Nova. Tons of Bossa Nova patterns. It can be so many different kinds. Here's a very generic, right? Some people dismiss these tunes like, oh, one note samba is so silly. And first off, it's really a misleading title, right? Because there's way more than just one note. But anyway, because they think it's kind of a silly tune. But have you tried to solo over those chords? It's not that easy. So a Bossa Nova can also be more kind of swung, like a jazz feel. This is like from Oscar Peterson. He's Girls from Ipanema. So there's not just one Bossa Nova style. There's, so many different ways to play Bossa Nova. And then you can be more of a jazz thing, right? Like Chicoria kind of Bossa Nova. Some more tunes, and then his arrangement of Triste there that I try to play in the beginning. So as you can tell, it's not super easy to play that. All these kind of typical chord voicings that you use that make it sound like that style, just like any other style of music. If you play country, there's certain ways to play chords that make it sound like country. If you play bluegrass, certain kinds of chords. If you play Django Reinhardt jazz, there's certain kind of chord voicings there. If you play flamenco, there's certain kinds of chords that make it sound like that genre. And that's what I find fascinating, because you need to bring some kind of life into the music. And in order to do that, in my opinion, you have to kind of step into a tradition and bring something out from that tradition into what you're doing. Because if it's only like a intellectual concept, it lacks that kind of dimension that you need, I think. That's why when I was in college and everybody was playing this kind of intellectual jazz, and don't get me wrong, I love some of that stuff, but first off, like they didn't really connect with an audience, I noticed, because you're only playing for other musicians. So in order to connect with an audience and make people feel something, you have to kind of give them something that they can relate to. And you don't have to understand it. You just, if I play this, that has some kind of life to it, because it's a tradition. And that's why I think some people like Avishai Cohen, for example, he's so successful, even though his music is super complex. He's bringing in the Jewish, Israeli kind of folk music into his music, which you can connect with, you can feel that there's something there. This is just my opinion. That's why I was so attracted to the gypsy jazz, because I noticed that there's something there that gives life to the music rather than just something that somebody wrote as an intellectual idea. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but the next style is Choro. So Choro is a little bit more of a faster style. Let's see what he says about it. Basically from Rio de Janeiro, the Choro emerged at the end of last century. I guess it's a little bit older. It was a Brazilian attempt to play European music, waltz and polkas. All these kind of styles are kind of connected, but I guess this is from the 30s and 40s, and the Bossa Nova was much later. I think it was like the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. So it's usually a little bit faster, and the melodies are often very intricate and challenging. I guess, for example, this tune. Tico Tico, I think it's a Choro. So an example here is. So then I'll find a Choro. So this is a bit slower. Or it could often be in minor like this. So when you play Choro, you can also go into kind of the classical guitar repertoire. So a famous one is Surdo de Baião. Please don't let me pronounce that again. So you might, it's like this is like part of the classical repertoire. So let's play that with the loop. So I'm not going to try to play that. I used to play that piece, but it's been a while. Of course, a very famous piece is Choro No. 1 by Villa-Lobos. So now we're entering more of classical guitar. You might have heard this too. Here is that kind of rhythm. That's kind of a Choro thing, so let me try to play that with. So this is not supposed to be played like that. This is supposed to be played as a classical piece with, with the rubato and everything. But I'll play it like this anyway. I could do that all day. So I actually prefer when I hear Villalobos, these pieces. So he wasn't a guitarist, right? But he wrote for guitar. Very famous composer for guitar. And I prefer when I hear kind of Brazilian guitar players play this piece. But I'm not sure if it's supposed to be played like that. It's supposed to be played like it's, this epic classical piece or whatever. Then there's a tune in that style, Influenciado by Nelson Farias, with chords, and another tune which is looks really difficult. Moving on to Frevo from the northeast of Brazil. So it's kind of like it has a history of military music, so it's got like a march thing going on. So most musicians I know, they are kind of more or less aware of this stuff, especially bass players and definitely drummers and percussionists. They know this stuff. I was watching a video the other day with a lesson with John Patitucci, and he's talking about this stuff. He totally got it down. He knows the regions. I guess he's been there too, but you need to study this stuff. It's such an important, integral part of jazz that so you don't have to become an expert and know everything, but again, you need to dig a little bit deeper than just the generic textbook examples of how to do things, and that's why this book is great.
A combination that has that African way of having a straight eighth and a real pulse, and you'll hear the percussion on this. It's fantastic. It's Mr. Rogério Bocato, who's originally from Sao Paulo in Brazil. He's playing an instrument called the zabumba, where you hear the bottom going boom, 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 and it really gives us that really kind of dance-oriented feeling. So you really want to lock in with the percussion on this one as well.
So here's an example of a Frevo pattern. So here's a Frevo rhythm. Or it doesn't have to be the bass note in the bottom. It could be the lowest note of voicing. And then some variations on that, different examples. Sometimes they'll just play the offbeats as kind of like a fill. That can also be in 3/4, and then there are some tunes in that style, so I'm moving kind of fast here. So the next style is Baião, which I guess is from northeast, from Bahia. So this is a little bit closer to kind of, African music. And here it's kind of reversed. The bass is playing the syncopations. It's almost like a chanson, but not swung. And then the chord could be even. It's often kind of a Lydian. This is kind of a typical Milton Nascimento. You might have heard his tune Vera Cruz. It's really hard to do actually, because you're so used to doing it the other way around. It's one of my favorite tunes of his is that tune, Vera Cruz. Baião sounds like this. da Veracruz. It's a lot harder than you would think. Fantastic stuff. Then there's some more other examples of that. So then at the end there's a selected discography. So I have to admit, a lot of these names I have no idea who they are. So I've been spending this summer and just diving into this stuff, delving in and listening to all this great music. So some of my favorites here are João Bosco, obviously, Egberto Gismonti, Hermeto Pascoal, Elis Regina. These I knew of before. Dejavan. And then there's like obviously the older ones like Jobim and Antonio Carlos Jobim. Toninho Horta, some recommendations here of his albums. And you can find videos of him playing his own tunes, like on YouTube. He's got his own, I think it's his own YouTube channel where he's showing you how to play his tunes. It's really amazing, the stuff we can learn these days. So a lot of people kind of complain about like Spotify and stuff like that, that, you know, oh, back in the day you had to go to the record store and buy the record, and you had to walk through the tundra and, you know, the winter storm, and then you came home and you listened to the whole album from beginning to end. And now these kids today, they have every song in their cell phone. Instead of complaining about that, which at the end of the day it's a good thing, right? Having access to all this music, you should be inspired by it. And all these tunes, I could listen to them instantly. So people complain that people don't listen to a whole album. Well, do it. It's there. It's on Spotify. I'm assuming most people have Spotify or some other kind of streaming service. Listen to the whole album and listen to music and be inspired by this stuff instead of complaining about how things were better before. That was my little rant about that. Sorry about that. So as you can tell, I love this book, The Brazilian Guitar Book by Nelson Farias. And go and check out his YouTube channel. I'll promise you that you will spend hours there. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. And thank you for your time and attention. And I shall see you next time.